And welcome to this episode of the Capitalized Life and Retirement Show. I'm your host, Matthew Johnson, president and owner of Johnson Wealth and Income Management, a retirement income source located in Clear Lake and Humboldt, Iowa, serving clients in northern Iowa and southern Minnesota. Well, how are you today? I hope you're doing well, taking a little bit of time for yourself to get out this beautiful weekend and just enjoy the weather, get some errands done, maybe do a little bit of gardening, a little bit of vacationing, whatever you may be doing. I'm absolutely pleased to have you here. Today we have a chock full show, but I want to challenge some things that you and I have been seeing on the news, some things that we've been hearing. And today I've entitled our show, A Convenient Narrative. If anything, I've always been one to ask the question why. I've really always been the one that investigates, is what I'm hearing really true, or is it something that's potentially just that? It's just a narrative. And I think in more ways than one, that has served me very well over my lifetime. And I'm sure that you've had this experience too, where you hear news, you hear information, maybe it's around the water cooler, maybe it's on a newspaper stand, maybe it's on the internet, and of course, we have to believe everything that's on the internet because, after all, it's all true. But today, we want to talk about tariffs and how tariffs relate to prices. And I want to kind of take that issue and that topic on head on. Now, certainly, I'm going to tie this into you because if you're an up-and-coming retiree, or even more importantly, if you're already retired, if you're already in the distribution stage of your life, the information I'm going to share with you is absolutely, it's vital for you to be able to know this information and to take action on it so that you can have the retirement that you deserve. And oftentimes I've suggested that having the retirement you deserve means you've got more income than what you need. But we can't forget about the psychological part of the distribution stage of your life. When people say that they're worried about not having enough money, well, that worry is a psychological thing. It is something that has a psychological impact. It has a feeling. It has an end result, an implication down the road for you as a retiree. And today, we are bombarded by news. We are bombarded by narratives. We are surrounded by information. And I have to say, so much of the information sounds surreal. It sounds so true. It sounds so convincing. And yet, we have to be more careful today than any other generation before us in the information that we accept as truth. Today, we're hearing all about the tariffs. And more importantly, we're hearing about how these tariffs are already affecting us. And that's what we're going to be discussing today. Is that really real, or is that just a convenient narrative? Maybe you've been wondering the same thing. I know I have. But once you start to kind of dig into this and you investigate it a bit, I think what you'll find is surprising, but not really. It won't really be surprising to you once we start really uncovering all of the information that's there for all of us to find. Now, before we get started on today's radio show, I want to just say a special welcome to all of you that are new listeners. It seems like almost every single week I'm getting some sort of correspondence from you, whether you stop by my website at johnsonwim.com and you drop me a line, maybe you send me an email. Some of you have even gone as far as sending me things in the mail and letting me know that you appreciate the information that we're sharing on this radio show. And granted, I know I've got a face for radio. That's the reason I'm a radio voice instead of a radio face. But I know many of you have been going to my YouTube channel, The Capitalized Life. You've been watching previous videos and podcasts, and I appreciate that. I encourage you, if you're really liking what you're hearing, go back and watch previous episodes, whether it's on YouTube or whether it's on our website. I encourage dialogue. I encourage interaction. Even if you potentially have a viewpoint that I don't have, that's okay. This is America. I'm curious what you think about what's going on in this crazy world of ours. What's going on politically, what's going on in the market, what's going on with regards to taxes and all the various things that affect us as a retiree. In fact, I want to know what concerns you the most. If I'm going to be an effective radio show host, I want to be able to take and address topics that, yes, they may be a little bit challenging. They might be a topic that not too many people or advisors want to discuss. But I want to be able to do that for you, because if I'm going to take the time to host this radio show, I want you to be able to get value from what we're discussing. And so if I know what's on your mind, well, even if it's not my viewpoint, I am very much open to discussing that. Now, the second thing that I would encourage you to do is, if you haven't already, I encourage you to go out and get a copy of my book, The Capitalized Retirement. You get it from any of the major book resellers, very affordably priced. Because after all, education and information to be able to help change the course and the direction and the feel of a person's retirement, well, quite honestly, information should not be that expensive. And in this case, I want to be able to prepare you. Day after day, it seems there are so many individuals that I meet with, whether it's in northern Iowa, central Iowa, that seem so underprepared for retirement. And maybe you've been feeling this way as well. Maybe you know that it's important to get prepared for retirement, but you just haven't taken that step in contacting an advisor, contacting a fiduciary, beginning to really set in place the facts and the figures and the directionality of where you're going to go in retirement. And if this book, The Capitalized Retirement, kind of helps to stimulate that motivation to get things moving and going in a direction that helps you make more confident decisions, then I would say it's worth every penny that you spend on it. So, I don't know. How do you feel about tariffs? I know that tariffs has been the hot topic really ever since November. Well, they've been a topic even before then, but really once the elections took place, then at that point it was basically a foregone conclusion. We were pretty certain as Americans after we elected Trump that he was going to deliver on the promise of these tariffs. And we know that the tariffs had a great deal of disruptive effect on the market. The stock market was kind of gyrating in December, and again in January, and in February, and in March, and in April. Things were just kind of really starting to go to pieces. And of course, the market has come back a little bit. We see that here in the month of June, the NASDAQ, the S&P, they're starting pretty strong. We see that there's an uptick in mergers and acquisitions that are starting to take place, which we kind of anticipated. And yet, how do you feel? Are you buying everything that the news media is trying to sell to you, that prices are going up right now as we speak based upon the tariffs? Well, let's just get real about this. Tariffs are really a tax on imported goods. And they do have the potential to raise prices that you and I pay for the goods that we're consuming. They can increase the cost for businesses. If you're a business and let's say that you are relying upon imports of ingredients or imports of parts or materials, that's no doubt going to have a tangible effect on your cost of doing business. Those costs are eventually going to be passed on to the consumer. That's on to you and I. And of course, the word there is eventually. However, the overall direct impacts on the vast majority of consumer goods is often smaller than what it might seem. And so right now, when we look at the news, when we read the articles, we see that everything is going up. We see that companies are raising prices already. And I just wonder if you understand that when a tariff is implemented, even after it is fully implemented, even though it may immediately impact the trade that we have with that other nation, and it will no doubt impact the companies from that nation that are trying to import their goods and services, you do realize that it takes a tremendous amount of time for tariffs to trickle down into our everyday economy. And what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to entitle this, we're going to call this little phenomenon, the tariff excuse phenomenon. What we're seeing more and more of is this phenomenon, this excuse, this tariff excuse, and companies are extremely quick to point out to us that tariffs are the reason that prices are increasing. And while tariffs might play a small part, and no doubt many businesses will eventually be affected by them, and they have to be able to, raise prices to cover the economic impact that they're feeling or that they're experiencing. We have to be clear that when inflation is a hot topic, it allows and even creates a conducive environment for companies to justify raising prices. So it's almost as if we have prices that are going up, and no doubt prices are indeed going up, but is the inflation really real? Is the tariff really real? Or is it just kind of more imagined at this point because of what the corporations are doing to Americans? They're using the hot topic of a tariff to raise the price on you and I of the gizmo, the gadget, the thing that we want to buy. And 6 months ago, it was this price, and now 6 months later, the price is much higher. How did it get impacted that quickly? I think that's a really good question. And that's going to lead into the next kind of revelation as we get into this. We're going to be looking at some of the financials that we're seeing in corporations all across broad America. And I have a big question for you. Why is it that if they're losing so much to tariffs, the tariffs are having this immediate impact right now, according to them and their narrative, then why are their profits so absolutely large? Sit tight. We'll be right back as we explore a most convenient narrative. Sit tight. And welcome back to the second half of the Capitalized Life and Retirement Show. I'm your host, Matthew Johnson, president and owner of Johnson Wealth and Income Management, a retirement income source located in Clear Lake and Humboldt, Iowa, serving clients in northern Iowa and southern Minnesota. If you're just joining us, welcome to today's program. Today we're discussing the hot topic of tariffs, and certainly this is not a new topic to this radio show, but if you're new, I want to just say welcome, number one. And number two is everything that we're seeing, everything that we're reading, everything that we're being told on the news about how tariffs are immediately impacting us. They're immediately causing the costs around us to increase. Is it really real? Is it real, or is it maybe imagined? Or is it maybe contrived? The reason I entitled today's radio show The Convenient Narrative is just in the last half of today's program, we discussed how we have what I'm going to call the tariff excuse phenomenon. Now, I want to just point out that this is not the very first time that we have seen this phenomenon. I want you to think back to a point in time in which you really don't want to really be remembering, at least I don't. And that was back to 2020 when we have COVID and we shut the world down, we send everybody home. And then you try to do anything, you try to build anything, you try to buy anything while you're sitting at home because you have one thing on your hands more than anything else, and that's called time. And did you actually get what you wanted, or was it time after time after time that you were being told, no, we can't get that for you. supply chain shortage. No, we can't get that for you, supply chain shortage. Now, was that true? And the safe answer is yes, in most part, that was true. However, what happened to the prices of those goods and those services and those things that you were getting? Well, one of the things that I experienced was, I was obviously spending a lot of time at home, and I had to-dos. I had things that I wanted to do. And one of the things that, I had always needed to get done and finished on my house was leafless gutters. And it turns out that every single contractor that I called, every single supplier, even if I wanted to put it up myself, it was going to be, oh, well, the prices are up 25% because of a supply shortage. You see, anytime we have a scarcity of anything, I wouldn't care if I went out and I said, listen, today there's going to be no more carrots. If I said that and people really took me at my word and they started going and trying to buy carrots, eventually, guess what's going to happen? There is going to become a scarcity of carrots, and the cost of carrots are going to go up. Well, what do you think is happening to you and I as Americans when we're being blasted in the face every single day about tariffs? Corporations are not dumb. They know their customers. They know their customer base. They have so much data on us, given today's technology, that they know our purchasing habits. They know where we go, what we buy, how much we're willing to spend on it. They know our median income. Our world is full of data. We very rarely have any safe bastions of privacy in this country anymore. And tariffs seem to me, right now, to be a very convenient narrative. These are things that we have to be very careful of. But if these companies are suffering so badly that they're having to increase their prices just to cover the material goods and services, then I have a major question for them. Then why is it that when I look at the corporate profits, they are absolutely soaring in this country? Many corporations are reporting record, and if not record, near record profits this year. Tariffs are truly squeezing their margins. If tariffs were so truly squeezing their margins and so severely cutting down on their profits, then why, when they report to their shareholders on their profiting calls, their earnings calls, why are we seeing so much in the way of profit? Why is that? This suggests that, to me, these corporations do have room to absorb increasing costs that will eventually be affecting them, and some in more ways than others, in bigger ways than others, in more substantial ways than others. But the reality is that right now, they choose not to. Immediately, they are using this excuse of tariffs to increase prices. We can look at anything from the technology giants in America to the energy sector. Good Lord, we can look at the egg production corporations. We can look at the food corporations such as Nestle, and we can look at Cargill, and we can see that they are running very strong profits right now. Why is that? Why is it if they're already feeling the squeeze? So I think one of the things that is causing the cost of living for you and I to go up right now is not necessarily the tariffs. More so, I think we can point our finger to a lack of competitive pressure. And that's one of the things that I know we have somewhat pulled away from in this country. It is so much less expensive to be able to get material goods and supplies for the parts that you might make from other countries. And yet, we need to rekindle the competitive spirit within this country. We need young men, we need young women to be ingenuitive, to be inventive, to be able to take their dreams and their aspirations and to actually act upon them. We need that competition because competition makes the world go round. Supply chain snarls versus tariffs are a very big thing. You know, when we distinguish between a supply chain disruption, like what I mentioned back in 2020 and 2021, and tariffs, for a while, genuine supply chain issues were very real. We can think about all of the port congestion that took place. We can think of the labor shortages and the manufacturing slowdowns. Right now, we have maximum employment. We do not see a lot of unemployment right now. We see workers that are working. We see corporations that are expanding. We see mergers and acquisitions, as I mentioned earlier. And they were back in 2020 when there's massive layoffs and people are having to go home. Of course, that is going to drive the cost up because there's fewer hands manufacturing those things. But my question is, so what's the problem today? You see, we have to be very careful to be able to tell the difference between what's real and what's imagined. And I know it's difficult. I know it's very, very difficult. And especially you're living in a rural community. You don't have the opportunity to be able to have, maybe 6 different businesses that sell the same or similar thing. If you live in a small community, if you want that, you got to drive to a much bigger place. Maybe you drive to Ames. Maybe you drive to Ankeny. Maybe you drive to Mankato. But we have to realize that everything that we're hearing is not always true. Now, here's where we have to be really careful for ourselves. We know that whether things are real or things are imagined, when it comes to prices of goods and services, it's very real. At the end of the day, regardless of whether it's corporate greed or it is a tariff that drives a cost up for a pound of bacon or a gallon of gasoline or a set of tires that you're putting on or a window that you're putting in your house. At the end of every day, if the costs of goods and services are going up, then what are you doing to be best prepared for that within your portfolio? And I want to go back to some basics because all too often we are taught as consumers, we are taught as up-and-coming retirees or retirees that the best thing for us to do to be able to stay ahead of inflation is to have money in the market. And yet if we've looked back at the last 6 months and we've seen all the volatility and all of the turbulence that our stock market has realized, well, if you're now retired, you no longer have the security of the paycheck. Let me ask, do you really want to have a lot of your money in the stock market when you know how volatile it is? Where one day you can be singing the praises and you can be feeling great because you've got a bigger number in the balance of your retirement account. And then the next day, you're depressed and you mope around all day because, well, you just looked at your account and you see a lot of parentheses, you see a lot of red. I would contend that what you need is not more exposure to risk. What you need is more income. At the end of the day, we don't care what's in our retirement account balances. What we care about is how much income we have coming into our bank account, because that's real. That's income that we can spend. That's income that we can save and reinvest if we have more than we need. And that's the reason why we must consider what is the intention of your money. What is the advisor that you have hired or the institution that you have hired? What is their business model? Is their business model simply growth, where you might get growth, you might get capital appreciation, but then you don't? How is that going to make you feel if you experience that month after month, year after year? Does it make you nervous? Well, I'd like to share an equation with you, and this is kind of a spin on one that I've shared before, and it's the equation for growth. Growth equals income plus capital appreciation, I plus CA. And let's face it, we don't always get capital appreciation. But if we have income that's constantly being produced, whether it's interest and dividend income, and Lord willing, if you're in retirement, you are receiving at least 6% in interest and dividends from your portfolio. Interest and dividends that you can spend, interest and dividends that you can reinvest. If you've mandated with the institution that you work for or the advisor that you work with, that you should be able to have net of fees 5% every year off from your portfolio in interest and dividends. And guess what? You have a fighting chance with the costs and the prices going up. But if you're having to sell shares because you don't have enough interest, you don't have enough dividends being produced, maybe you're even taking a more conservative approach. You have all of your money sitting in things like fixed interest CDs. Now that can make you feel good for a while, but what are you going to do later this year when the Federal Reserve drops interest rates? You see, folks, whether this is a convenient narrative for corporations to gouge us on prices, whether it's real or whether it's imagined, it does not matter. At the end of the day, if you need more income because the cost of things are doing more, I encourage you to do the right thing and begin to focus your portfolio, your efforts, how you're investing your money so that you can get what you deserve. And that's more income than you need. I'm Matthew Johnson. Thank you so much for watching and listening. And remember, it's up to you to make today a great day.